Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Beyond Limits podcast. I'm your host, Elie, and today I have a very important subject I want to talk to you about, and that is on the topic of picking the right people on your team. And because this is a complex topic that we need to address, I would like to divide this into two parts. I'm going to give you 3 tips right now, and the following 3 tips in the next podcast. So you may ask, why is it so important to pick the right people on your team? Well, to be quite honest, if you pick the wrong people on your team, chances are your organization is doomed for disaster. And that is not what you want. You want to be successful, you want to be productive, and you want to be efficient in the way you run your organization. And part of that is hiring the right people. Hire the wrong people, and you are going to be having a disaster. But hire the right people, and you are going to be destined for success. Now, having said that, I have 3 tips this podcast that I want to share with you on picking the right people on your team, starting with tip number 1, and that is you've got to have mutual trust and respect between you and that particular individual that you are hiring to be on your team. What does that mean? Well, when I'm hiring somebody to be on my team, I would like them to employ certain characteristics, one of which I would like for them to have trust and respect for myself and their peers. Because what I've noticed in over 10 years of being a public servant and leading charities and nonprofit organizations is that mutual trust and respect, to me, are the foundation of any successful organization. And you lose that, you lose the quintessential characteristic of what makes your organization. And if you hire somebody that does not employ these 2 important characteristics, then I'm telling you, you are doomed for failure. That individual that you're hiring that may have so many talents and skills that they bring to the organization, but if they don't have mutual trust and respect, believe me when I say they are a liability to your organization and they are of no use to your company or team. I have personally encountered individuals with limitless potential and a lot of talents that they brought to my team, but I understood in the long run that they were more of a liability than an asset when I put them in a particular position, because when you don't have respect or trust for the people with you or your leaders, it is going to affect the team negatively in the long run, and it's going to create a lot of hostile work environment. That is something that is going to negatively affect your team, and that is something you definitely don't want on you or your organization. So please hire the right people with all kinds of abilities and talents, but please hire them with mutual trust and respect, because without that, you are destined for failure. And the second tip I want to give you about hiring the right people on your team is that you've got to pick people that have effective communication skills. And you may ask me, what do I mean by that? Well, it's simple. The way we communicate with one another can either make or break a certain project or team. When I think of hiring the right people, I always think of effective communication in the back of my mind. Why do I pick an individual to do a certain job or certain task? It's because I trust they are going to employ effective communication skills. And that would be on 2 levels. One would be top-down communication, and the other one is how do we communicate to one another? And of course, we're not just talking about communicating amongst one another, whether it's communicating to the leader or to the team, but the reality is, if you are serving a client, how are your leaders or the people that you're hiring on your team communicating to that said individual? Are they effective at relaying information back and forth with efficiency and accuracy? Or are they not good at conducting themselves and relaying those said informations to the clientele? I would personally choose somebody on my team that is able to communicate effectively to me as well as the team that I choose them to be on, but also how are they at communicating to my client base? How are they in communicating their ideas and thoughts and whatever I task them with? How are they able to communicate to my client? But even if you don't have a client base that you're serving, and maybe that particular individual is working behind the scenes, you got to remember what we said earlier. You got to have effective communication skills between yourself and them, and between them and their peers. So regardless of whether they're serving a clientele and working behind a desk at your organization, you have got to understand that you have to employ people that have good communication skills. And the last tip I want to share with you regarding this topic is that you've got to pick the right people who are capable of making sound decisions. Because let's face it, working in any organization or any team, you are going to always go on to counter unexpected situations and even last minute problems that you have to troubleshoot. And so if you're picking somebody to work for you and with you, you have got to pick somebody that's able to make sound decision making. And that means in last minute situations, how are they going to react or act to certain problems and pressure project is demanding upon them and their team? How are they going to respond to certain events that occur last minute? You could have picked a great leader on your team that employs lots of trust and respect to you and their team, and even have effective communication skills, but if they're unable to make sound decision, specifically with last minute changes, then they're not being as effective and efficient as you want them to be. And so picking people with abilities to conduct sound decision on a regular basis is very, very important to you and your team, as well as your organization. So I would look at somebody that employs good decision-making skills. So to summarize this part 1 of 2 podcasts on the subject of picking the right people on your team, you have got to have people that, number 1, employ mutual trust and respect for you and for the team, as well as their organization. And number 2, you've got to hire people that employ effective communication skills, not only for yourself, but amongst one another. And lastly, you want to pick someone who is capable of making sound decisions, given the circumstance, specifically with unexpected things. As we wrap up today's talks, we just want to say thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this podcast, make sure you hit the like button. And if you desire to hear more about leadership and teamwork, please subscribe to the channel, and we will see you in the next podcast.